So hello and welcome to another video from Another Knitted Thing. Today we're going to be looking at this rib structure that I have made on the double bed and recreating it, which can also then lead into this sample which I've made also on the double bed. And it's just a process of using transferring the stitches between the beds, using rib structure sometimes, and also using all of the needles only on one bed. At no point do we use a full rib, so this is just stitches only on one side of the machine, one bed at one time. So I've cast on with a double bed here, and I am now in the process of transferring all of my stitches into a 5x5 rib. I'm just going to speed this up because you don't really want to sit and watch me do it the whole time. But you can use any rib you want. If you wanted to use a 4x4, you can use that. I've chosen a 5x5 because this is one that I found works best. It gives most definition in the structure that I'm trying to create. But you can do whatever you like. The whole time through this, all of the rows that I've knit, the number of rows that I knit, the needle positions that I put in, they are all variables, and you can change those depending on your design. So I have put this into a 5x5 rib. I'm just going to take note of which needles I have currently working on the front bed and which I have working on the back bed. And that is because we're going to get to a point where we will knit all of the needles on one bed, and then we're going to replace into a 5x5 rib structure, but using the opposite needles that are currently not working. So this is a sample that I knitted quickly to test it before. So you can see I have a 5x5 rib structure. So the purl side, the knit side, the purl side, and the knit side. That gives the rib structure itself. And then opposite that, I have swapped the needles over. So I've got the knit, purl. That gives it more texture, and then in between those, if you can just see there's a little bit of a stripe, that is where I am then only working on one needle bed. So my yarn is in place. I'm using a plaiting feeder. I quite enjoy using plaiting feeders because I feel that it gives a bit more definition to the knit. You don't have to use a plaiting feeder if you do not have one. You can just use one colour if you would like. And with this plaiting feeder and with this 5x5 rib structure, I'm going to knit 12 rows of normal knitting, you could say. These 12 rows, you don't have to knit 12. You can knit more than that if you like, or less. That is up to you. I'm just knitting 12 because that is the sample that I have knitted. After those 12 rows, I am then going to transfer all of my front bed stitches that were in that 5x5 rib structure over onto the back bed or the main bed. And from that, I'm going to do some rows only on the back bed. So you can see here I have turned off my front bed carriage. And that is because it's a little trick. I want to remember where those needles were on the front bed that I was just using. So if I turn off the carriage, those needles aren't going to move anywhere. They're just going to sit there. So I'm remembering exactly where they were. So these are needles that were in work and they did have stitches on. So these 5 needles here had stitches. The 5 next to them didn't. I'm now going to transfer the stitches from the front bed to the needles that didn't have stitches on previously. So this 5 here. So I'm transferring back into the 5x5 rib structure, but on the opposite needles. So you can see this is what I've done here. I've jumped ahead and done it. And if we take note of these needles and then flip back to my original 5x5 rib structure, so take a look at this, you will then see that I have now a different needle structure. So this is back in real time. And these are needles I'm going to use. I'm just flipping over that 5x5 rib structure and knitting on the opposite needles. I will then knit again 12 rows with the 5x5 rib structure. 5x5 is really hard to say over and over again. And once I've done that for 12 rows, I am then going to transfer all of those back bed needles back over into the front bed. So now I'm only working on the front bed. And just by working on the front bed, this is what gives it that sort of concertina, the zigzag kind of fold, I guess you could say. I disconnect the main carriage and I knit, and that is just so I know exactly where those needles are that I worked with on the main bed. So when I then transfer the stitches back into the 5x5 rib structure, I know to use the opposite needles of the ones that I just used. And it's this of just transferring into the opposite needles that you used before and then going in between working on one needle bed and the opposite rib structure. It's that creates the structure. So I've just gone to a different view so you can kind of see what's going on. Once I transfer all of my stitches, especially going back into the rib structure, I do like to put my needles up into the D position. You'll see me doing that every now and then, and that is just to force those needles to knit. There's nothing more frustrating than transferring all of the stitches over and taking the carriage across and those needles don't knit. Sometimes they can drop, sometimes the yarn just doesn't go through the needles. So I like to force them to knit by putting them up into that upper working position or the D position, just to force them to knit as they go through the carriage. It's just a safety thing. Also, sometimes the weight can get a bit odd sometimes, so you can also see that I'm using my left hand. I'm right-handed, so I'm using my left hand underneath to just make sure that the takedown or the weight is sufficient enough for the stitches to form on the needles. And it's just a repetition of that, so transferring between a 5x5 rib onto all the stitches on one needle bed, knitting a certain amount of rows and then transferring back into a 5x5 rib, but on the opposite needles, and then transferring all the stitches again onto the opposite bed to knit with. This might be a good point to say that I do have a worksheet for this on my Patreon. I do like to back up all of the techniques that I work with a technical sheet, or basically instructions that you can follow. So if you do want to go to my Patreon and subscribe to get those sheets, then I will be incredibly thankful. And there are a few more techniques up there and patterns that I haven't done videos for just yet. Whether I do videos for them or not, I have not decided just yet. But if you don't want to go onto the Patreon, then feel free to, those 3 words, like, comment and subscribe here on YouTube. I do read all the comments, so I will get back to you. And if you have any questions regarding any of the techniques as well, then pop them in the comments, or thoughts of how you could then work with this technique, pop that there too, because I'd love to see kind of what you do and how you work with this sample, and how you get along with it. There are other shapes and structures that I have put up on the Patreon technical sheet, so it's not just the rib structure. There are other ones as well which are to do with this rib structure and the transferring. But when you get into the transfers, everything goes a lot quicker. So yes, it is a lot of transferring every few rows, but you do get into the swing of it and it does get a lot quicker. So don't worry if you're there at the minute, just taking it easy with the transfers. It does speed up the more practice that you get into it. So I'm just going to finish this little section, and then we will see what it's like off the machine. So I repeat everything. I repeated these about 6 times, the whole repeat, and I've now transferred all of my stitches to the main bed so I can cast it off. You can see the plating and you can see a bit of the structure here as well. So this is how it looks like on the machine. It doesn't look like there's much form, but once it's off the machine, it's quite easy to see. Oh, dropped a stitch when I'm casting off. But it's all right. If you drop stitches when you're casting off, it's fine. As long as you know how to rescue stitches, then it is not a problem. So I'm just doing a quick latch tool bind off, or latch tool cast off, as this is the one that I find is the quickest and I'm most comfortable with these days. And I will just get to the end. And you'll be able to see the amount of structure that this technique gets right from the word go. So, oh, that's the most satisfying bit of knitting, taking it off the machine. So I'm now just going to take the comb off as well. And then we can have a look at this before and after steam. So I've used a polyamide yarn, so you can see it already has a lot of structure. It already has a lot of form, and it's just naturally folding up into those shapes. Naturally folded up into the rib shape and also the concertina shape. I haven't done anything with this. This is straight off the machine. And once I give it a little bit of a steam, which I'll go ahead and do now. So this is after steaming. You can see it's much more dense, much more form to it. That's from the polyamide that has shrunk slightly, but there's a huge amount of texture and a huge amount of form with this. So let me know how you go with this. I'm really intrigued to see your results. Tag me in them and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.